Good evening, good morning, and good night. Welcome to Inappropriate Radio. It's your host, Tashana, the hostess with the mostest. The Snaggletooth one. Let's get into this. So, hi guys. I actually started recording earlier. I have a segment that I didn't upload for multiple reasons. But I just wanted to pose a question. Alright. What do you consider to be rock bottom? And do you feel like it's God taking you there? Have you taken yourself there? Or are we still blaming our enemies? Alright. A lot of us have different relationships with the Creator. We all don't have the same understanding and perception of the Creator. And we definitely all don't have the same experience. God will sometimes leave you alone for like the first 20 years of your life, right? And especially if you don't come from a spiritual or a religious family, sometimes He will have you just not even knowing that He exists until it's time, right? Obviously, if you have heavy warfare in your bloodline and you've been attacked early on, if your parents have been attacked, if you have a particular assignment over your life, obviously, this is going to vary for each of us. But the overall gist is for you to really, really, really think back, right? Think back to your first situation, right? Where you could honestly say you have made contact with the Creator and He's been taking you through all of the necessary changes to get to the destination that He has in mind for you. We all have our own life experiences, and depending on how we're wired, we're going to perceive those things as one thing or another, right? If you haven't been trained to see things through spiritual lenses, right, or a spiritual lens, you won't look at spiritual attacks as a spiritual attack. You'll look at the attack as more so just life, right? But if you are spiritually inclined, then your perception and understanding of a lot of things are going to be spiritually based. You're going to probably always think of the spiritual component of all things first, right? Your understanding, your ideation, what it is that you feel you desire, what it is that you need to do, is all going to be based on your upbringing, your life experiences. And we've had this conversation, right? And like I said, I had already recorded something else, but nah, this is it right here. All right. What do you feel is rock bottom? Because that's going to determine how much your spirit can take. That's going to determine how much you've already invested into your spirit. Your response is contingent upon your relationship with yourself, the Creator, and everything that God created to connect to you. Again, if you're like a spiritual person, right, your perception of these things are going to be different from that of a person who's an atheist or someone who's not religious or spiritual. They're just going to look at it as another obstacle in life. Okay? So this is why it's very detrimental for you to have a clear understanding on what's going on. Obviously, if you're not spiritual or religious, then this is not even a conversation that you would be having, right? Because spiritual and religious people literally have different thinking. I mean, even religious and spiritual people, there's like a split, right? There's a fork in the road at some point, right? Where you can start making a distinction. Even if you listen to the conversations without a person telling you which group they belong to, after a few minutes of conversing, you'll know. Okay, you'll know. You have to make yourself see what it is that God wants you to see. And again, if you're not religious or spiritual, then obviously this is not a conversation that you would just be having by chance. I mean, not even a chance of you having this conversation. However, I would like to add that a lot of us don't really understand that in order to start a new anything, sometimes the things that are there have to be removed. Obviously, if you have been practicing any level of spirituality, then you know, like, okay, I'm not really necessarily talking to you at this point, but I can be. The overall gist here is that your perception of self needs to be aligned with God's perception of you. Who God wants you to be, you have to be willing to get to know that person, seek that person. And right, it's easier to say it than to do it, right? We can say anything, we can do anything, but when you have to start walking intentionally in the energy that God wants you to walk in, you're gonna get more than an attack. Okay, you're gonna get everything about your life shifted, simply because when you start to bring balance to the forefront, when you start to bring energy, and we talked about this yesterday, when you start to bring a particular level of consciousness into the realm, in this realm anyway, right? You literally start casting out things that are vibrating at the lowest frequency. So what I'm saying is, have you been casted out? And I'm going to say no if you're listening, right? If we're having this conversation. So again, what do you think is rock bottom? Like, to you, what type of scenario is rock bottom to you? Obviously, you're not answering me back, so this is just something for you to consider and simply reflect on, right? Look at your environment, and we've talked about this the other day. Just really becoming fully aware of the things that you are engaging in, and taking it in and saying, you know, I would like to understand these things from a better perspective, or a different perspective, or a higher perspective. Okay? If I asked you what you consider to be the lowest of the low, or like you can't really go any lower than this, what does rock bottom look like to you? I could say that I live in a shelter, but it's been worse with me having my own place. You understand? So the physical scenario is probably, for me anyway, one of the things that's not as, poor or hard to conceive as is just being in the wrong energy, having the wrong mindset, being around the wrong people, not believing in your own movement, in your own self, and having this disconnection, right, with everyone that you come into contact with, pushing you further into isolation, bringing you more confusion, adding on to the doubt and the misunderstandings. Like, all of these things are intertwined. Remember, everything is connected. So again, if I wanted to ask you, what does rock bottom look like? I'm sure whatever you consider or say is going to be different from whatever I consider. And it's not just because we're wired different and we have different mindsets, and because you may be spiritual and I may be religious, or vice versa, or because we both may be atheists and you may be a Satanist and I may be, just a drag. It doesn't really count if you don't even pay attention to those things or consider them when you make this decision, right? Obviously, your consciousness is not something, or your subconscious rather, is not something that you focus on when someone's asking you a question. It's just automatic, right? It's mainly what you've already endured, honestly, on a mental and emotional level, on a psychological level. Again, I've been in better situations with a place to stay more than I have being homeless. So your perception is based on the internal things, right? Again, the physical aspect of it, you'll consider last. If you can look back at a time in your life and actually be able to correctly pinpoint, right, when you made a decision that has absolutely nothing to do with your growth, but you just made the decision because it's part of life, right? Decision making. And you look up and you realize that you've invested a lot of time and energy into something that has nothing to do with your forward movement. Eventually, you'll start to drop it and let it go because you're seeing it's a waste. Unless you can conceptualize some reason to need this thing or want it over another, okay? You don't have to force things. You don't have to make them fit. But I just knew that this question was going to be important to get people to think, to also be a little bit more grateful of their situations, because as you reflect, you'll start noticing that your situation is probably not that bad because there's someone going through something worse all the time, right? None of us have the worst situation, no matter how bad it is. There's always someone with something worse going on. Just remember that, okay? Not to mention, you have an assignment over your life. That rock bottom is your strength, your faith, your patience, your expertise being exercised. Okay? Always keep that in mind. Understand that everything you're experiencing is connected to where God is taking you, whether it's for this lifetime or another. Okay? You want to be emotionally involved with everything that is connected to your purpose. You want to connect your emotions and your mindset to the higher perspective. All right. But I'm going to go. I do love y'all. Just reflect on that question. Think about it long and hard. I hope y'all been drinking y'all water, eating y'all fruit and vegetables, and sipping on your own tea because it's free. And I do hope y'all enjoyed y'all weekend. Love y'all. Peace.